Welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, Today we're going to be going over lanes in Marvel Crisis Protocol, how they work, uh, and what they kind of mean to an aggressive team, and then how we kind of corral or maybe contain our opponent teams, and what really I think the goal and strength of a team like Guardians or a Shadowlands Daredevil, or some of these other similarly wide aggressive teams kind of want to be doing, or maybe even just an aggressive team overall, right? You're trying to accomplish the objective of killing people, and a lot of times the best way to do that is to get people all into one area. And so that's what we're going to be kind of going over today. If you've watched some of the previous videos that I've put out on turn zero, turn one strategy, you've heard me talk about lanes a lot. I've talked about it for sure on the Infinity, right? And when I'm thinking about lanes, imagine them just kind of being like these vertical strips here. So you've basically got lane one, two, and three. And you have the middle lane, the far right flank, and then the left flank lane. Now, if you guys are looking at this and you're like, wow, these lines aren't straight, you know what? They're probably not. I did my best. Wow, these lines are huge. Yeah, they sure are. For whatever reason, couldn't get them to become any smaller. So uh, please don't beat me up for that. I can take a beating for having this just be bafflingly dumb content that people are miffed about. I can have this be criticized for uh, being just utter nonsense, or me just being an idiot, right? Maybe I'm looking at this game or thinking about things in ways that other people are just like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, those are all fine. Just please don't beat up on me on my art stuff. I tried, okay. I did try to make sure that these zones are all kind of visible, right? So there's at least that with the numbers. So all that stuff being said, we're gonna kind of move back into this. Again, we've talked a little bit about lanes. Obviously, in the first video, we're going to be talking about demons, right? And that's the center lane, so that would be lane two. Um, in both of these videos, or in pretty much any of the videos that you're going to hear me going over as far as aggressive tactics or other things, but especially with Guardians, and especially on certain crises like an Infinity, or even a Scoundrels, or D shapes. As we start moving into discussing some more of those, you're going to hear me talk maybe about wanting to get your opponent's team to be corralled or contained within an area. As the aggressive team, I firmly believe that in establishing a bit of like a dominant board position, right? And especially because you've got range in something like a Guardians or a Shadowlands, or other things, right? Um, I think even a Shield can do this really well. They've got excellent ranged options. So, in looking at this, we have all these different 12 zones, and what they represent is just different parts of the board. Now, if I'm an aggressive team and I'm trying to kill off my opponent as much as possible so I can score a lot, while at the beginning of the game they're only scoring a little bit more than me, uh, that's really the ideal situation there, right? And so one of the best ways that you can prevent opponents from scoring is getting them away from the secures. And so obviously, for the point of this, if you could get an opponent team by around round 3 or 4 and have them all over here, and you're only down by, let's say, 2 points by that time, if they're in zones 1, 3, 10, and 12, you're probably going to win that game. Because you have the ability with your models and just where some of these crises can allow you to post up at, that they're going to stay contained in there and they're just going to be stuck in a kill box, right? But in order to get people over to these kind of really advantaged positions for us and to give us a real dominant board position, we have to be aggressive in the first place. And if anybody's ever seen any of my games or played against me with a Guardians team, more often than not, by round 3 and on, most of my team is going to be on my opponent's half of the table. Okay. And that's especially the case on something like Infinity, because after I get done running a lane, I don't know why that just came up. I've talked about collapsing a board, and what I'm trying to do on something like Infinity, and to kind of illustrate, I've brought out the Spider Virus here as like an extract just to get tokens out, and we'll pretend that's a B shape for now, or maybe that's Scoundrels, right? I have run my lane 3 here, okay? I've cleared out this side, or maybe they've all panicked and they've taken a bunch of injured and otherwise unhappy models, and they've started moving their way back across to get over here. If I can contain my opponent while I've already got models here that are shooting at them or contesting this point and really working there and chasing them down with stuff like Gamora or Nebula and other heinous things, if they've given up on this side, I can collapse it down, and now I've got the option of, rotating my models around, working these secures myself, right? And then just, they can have as many extracts as they want for the most part. I mean, as long as it's not these 5-point-ones. If I'm scoring 3 to 4 secures a turn, and I've got the ability to shoot onto them, and they can't really get out of there, they're going to be in a real bad way, right? And that's what establishing a dominant board position can do for you. So, that's on a B shape or an F shape. And so again, when you're doing that, you're trying to win a lane on a B or an F shape. The goal is to win like lanes 1 or 3. Okay. While if you're on something like Scoundrels, right, you're going to have an F shape. If you can have somebody that's there in the middle, that is just tough, that is maybe just creating an even scoring situation there, great. One thing that you can't really have happening is if we're already going to be kind of conceding, like I've mentioned about in other videos, we're going to be conceding the extract advantage to our opponent. Just because they're going to have better tech for it, they're going to have better tech models for that sort of stuff. Our tech is being built upon killing and getting around quickly and doing damage, right? So if they've got other people that are better tech for that, they're probably going to beat us on extracts. We can live with being down a point. So if we're already going to concede that, like, we can't on an F shape give up the 3 spots. It's fine to score evenly on an F shape, but we can't give up the middle. So you're always going to be working lane 2 on an F shape, and it's your choice of 1 or 3. So the goal on a B shape, you don't need to worry so much about the middle. Now, it can help if you're able to kind of clear out an area to start moving a model around. If you're able to clear off, say, lane 1, you take a model, you have them kind of rotate and work around here in the middle. They don't always need to be scoring. One of the most beautiful things about a late game Star-Lord, if things are really going your way, so you just pop over here with a medium move. If somebody's trying to get out of this, side, this corner, you just, pop them with a hit and run, and then boom, right back onto your point. It's the same thing. You can have Groot, leave this side, and he can start making his way over. Rocket can just sit there for the rest of the game. And, if you've collapsed up that, board side enough, and if there's only a few models here, you can really get to working on them with maybe what's left of your team on that side. And if not, you should be in a pretty dominant position from scoring so many of those secures that you should be able to come from behind in the game, right? So if we're talking about D shapes or maybe a C-shaped map or some of these other things that are kind of more across the center, at the end of the day, we're trying to win a lane. Now, you're going to be committing a model to your own backside there, and depending on where you go with that and what direction you want to do with it, I typically will put a Star-Lord or a Rocket back there, but I will not play Rocket and Groot together on a D shape. I just think Groot is just too slow. He's fine in a lot of situations, and Rocket and Groot for the most part are really good. They are not good when they have to move a lot. Rocket is actually not terrible at it, but the reason why it really doesn't feel as bad with him is because he's only a 2 threat. And a lot of times if you can sit here with a 2 threat and score 1 point around, you're fine. Star-Lord's kind of an exception at 3. I don't like just scoring 1 point with a 3 threat if I can help it. But it's acceptable depending on who they are and what their job is, right? Star-Lord is our leader. He doesn't need to be getting in the mix. You can live with him scoring 1 point. So he's going to be kind of your back D-point guy. Another reason why I recommend Star-Lord for this is, again, basically round 2 and on, you're going to have this kind of self-sustaining economy of I move from here, I go over here with my medium move, I shoot somebody with a hit and run, and I move back. It's good times. And you can just do that all game for as long as you need to, and you can kind of pick your side on where you want to supplement things. But if I've already kind of indicated that we're going to be attacking over here in lane 3 on this flank, and we're shooting into opponents that are in zone 6, my team is almost entirely going to be centered there. Now, I might have some models like an Agent Venom or somebody that's got some sort of movement abilities. Maybe a Ghost Rider is going to be kind of around here. Their whole point is to try to, to work some containment. And worst case scenario, if I need to pivot, if they decide that they don't want to score this point anymore and abandon it, if that's a significant enough model, I need to be able to have something around to help out old Star-Lord, so I can rotate them from here to here real quick. Because we don't just want to give up Star-Lord to just any model, right? So, but the whole point of these D-shapes is you just want to win a zone. And so if you do that, and if Star-Lord's able to just maintain this and they haven't left this, odds are you're going to start pushing people back over here, and maybe you end up with some sort of a containment situation where you've got their whole team, back over here or back over there or what's left of it. And that's what I'm talking about as far as containment. It just kind of naturally lends itself if you can run these lanes. Other teams are going to be inherently disadvantaged in a fight because they're going to be trying to score points. We are going to be inherently advantaged in a fight because we are trying to kill them. And if we happen to score some points along the way, all the better, right? So that's how you want to go about approaching a D shape. Some of the more condensed maps, all this other stuff, maybe the new the new sword. I think you can afford to bring a rocket there. I don't know how easy it is going to be to collapse teams or run lanes per se. It's pretty centralized. You can still choose a lane, but I think you almost just need to just choose one side of the board, and just stick to it. And maybe you're not even all that worried about having to work that midline point or beyond, right? Now, Intrusions is a little bit weird because you can't really get to team 2 cornered off of it, right? They're still going to need to be up there on that center line contesting it. And, one of the most unfortunate things about Intrusions is people can just use it to escape and get away, right? It costs a power. So the best thing that still applies on something like Intrusions, which is taken quite a bit by Guardians, going to be in the next video, is you still want to run a lane, right? Except unlike a few of the others, you have a little bit more choice in how you want to go about doing it. You can run lanes 1 and 3 if you want, because you can always just bring your team together later just by going through the portals, or you can run lanes 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, right? I will be honest with you, I have a strong tendency towards running lanes 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, right? Just something that involves this middle lane on Intrusions. And I will completely ignore the other, whether that be the left, middle, or right flank, because I want them to have, their bullseye or somebody that's sitting around over there, and it's usually a lower threat kind of weaker model. And if they're just sitting around there and with their 4 dice builder or whatever, if they decide to hop through the portal, and do an attack and then try to, hop back, you're essentially just having them waste their power. And if they don't hit hard enough when they're coming through those portals, or if they've only got gainers and not builders, they're just really not going to be generating power to do anything worthwhile. So it gives your opponent a natural disadvantage, right? So a lot of opponents, because they're so focused on scoring, will try to be on all 3. We're trying to win 2 of them, right? If that makes any sense, and just abandon 1. Worst case scenario, you can tie on 1. So I like to tie on the middle, but I always want to make sure that I win a flank. So when you're winning a flank, what's the best way to set that stuff up? How do you set this up on a D, right? Because you don't want to just give away that you're going to be focusing your team in one area, okay? Because then, your opponent will just match up with you, and, you might be dealing with a fair fight, which is not ideal for Guardians, right? We don't have all the greatest defensive tech on the world, and if we get people and things too clumped up, our range and other things, our movement or other superpowers or abilities or our cards or all this stuff, they just don't work as well. So we tend to want to have things maybe a little bit more mid-range, and we want to be able to pick apart models and take them out one by one if we can. Don't let the big baddies get too powered up. They're going to do that on their own anyhow. So we can take out a few, and then if, that bullseye is sat over there in zone 4 or 7 for the whole game, well, that's fine. He ain't going to last too much longer, right? So to kind of finish like the thought on this, right, is you want to be trying to get your opponents into like one of these squares. If it's 2, right, more than likely if it's an E shape, you're going to get people in a best case scenario up in 2, and you're going to have a real dominant position up here on the midline and forward of that. You've got to be able to move into people with the right models, with models that have the ability to do it. Ghost Rider's great. He's super fast. You can make some really good aggressive plays with Agent Venom. You can make some decent plays late in a round with somebody like a Bill, right? Use your opponent's tactics with Bill against them, right? What's wrong with the model with a size 4 throw that's able to just walk up and say, nope, we're going to secure this now. I'm going to throw you off the point. If it's worth a VP, cool. Like if that's all he happens to do that round, and it gives us like a 3-0, advantage on secure VPs, and maybe we're losing extracts by 2 or something, right? Fine. We just got ourselves an advantage that round. So totally worth it. So you got to kind of know when the right time is to do that. Typically, if you're wider than your opponent, you have the ability to kind of move forward. And in my opinion, I think you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive if you just pick your battles and use the right models for it. Gamora's really great at winning herself a flank and collapsing things down, right? And everybody kind of has to serve a purpose in your roster, but for me, right, I like to get things collapsed on. I like models that can do that for me. And this is a lot of times how I look at the board, okay? I, as a general rule, again, want most of my games played across this midline on their side of the table. It gives me all the freedom in the world to retreat and move my models around as I see fit to score points when I need to at that point. If I can avoid getting myself blasted to bits on the way in, or if I have models that just I don't care about, like sometimes a Ghost Rider, or just models that I want to have them soak up a bit. Let's pick our battles. But we should be able to kind of edge our way forward into these games. And by round 3, if you're doing stuff right, you'll be at that midline and pushing people forward, and their options will be severely limited. And they'll be losing models if you've ran lanes on them, and you've given yourself these unfair advantages over people because they're just trying to do too many things. It's not a terribly difficult game if you focus on one aspect of it for a while. And you've got to commit to it, though. And what I mean by is that you've got to commit to this aggressive style of play. Be prepared. You're going to take some losses along the way, and you're going to get beat up. It's just the nature of a dice game, especially a game like MCP. But more often than not, this is going to work out for you. If you can get a team to collapse itself, it's easy pickings, right? This is how you go and win out a game. So hopefully, again, this wasn't too an abstract of a thought. I think it should go without saying that if you're an aggressive team, I don't think you really ever want to have models that are hanging out in 10, 11, or 12. It's just, I guess there is a point sometimes where you can run if you just need it to win a game. I don't even like having models that are touching this kind of back point if I can help it. I want them to be here or forward. It just sets up more. And, you know, if I do have somebody in the back area, ideally it's only one. Sure, for, you know, a round or two, you're going to have models that are going to be around this point, or this point if you're on a B shape or an F shape. But the goal, again, if you're going to have a bunch of models there on one side, is you want to win this side and then push it forward here and either kill everything off that they've got on that area, or get them to take a beating and abandon it and go over here. And if you're able to hold this, cool. It just creates that whole entire zone of where we just give them a third of the board and say 2/3 of this board is ours. You can work in zones 4, 1, 2. I get everything else, right? That's really what we're trying to accomplish in most any of these games. And it's either, you know, give them zones and models in, you know, 2, 3, 6 or 4, 1, 2. We want to be winning 5 and 8, but we got to be able to pick our battles there. If you're on something like Gamma, hopefully you don't run into the wrong teams at the wrong threat values. It can be pretty rough. For some more inexperienced players, there are a lot of teams that will absolutely surprise Guardians on something like Gamma. Teams that you would not expect. I think Defenders with somebody like a Dynamo and some of the models that they can bring can just absolutely rip up your average Guardians teams on Gamma. And so we just don't have an advantage. But yeah, so the whole point of this video is to give you guys an idea, a visual representation of where I want to be moving my opponents to and what it actually looks like if I'm succeeding in that and getting people corralled and I'm able to really pick off folks. It more and best represents lane running, other things. I know there's been a lot said in this. Perhaps I need to drink some more coffee or less. No idea over here, right? But obviously, and I think I've said that word like 5 times now in like the last minute. If this is coming off as like a little bit too much, or if you need some clarification, you can always give me some feedback. I'm the Barncat or the Barncat on Discord. I'm in pretty much most of the main Discords. Probably more active in there than I should be, especially lately. Just a bit of a hobby of mine, right? So you can always hit me up there. You can leave a comment on this. This will be over on YouTube. All that stuff being said, hopefully this is helpful if you're trying to figure out lane running or what I might be meaning about trying to contain or corral a team or collapse a team. You know, I want them to collapse in on themselves so that way I can close in a trap all around them, right? So if you hear these things, this is basically what I see in my head. I see a middle line, I see lanes, and then certain places on the board that I want my opponent's team to be typically after round 3. And these videos that are going over the turn 0 and turn 1 tactics or strategies, a lot of those things are being meant to set up just those things that I've mentioned. Collapsing a team and then killing them off for later in the game, turn 3 and later. So that's it for this. I'm going to be doing intrusions here in a little bit. And hopefully this can provide some clarification for some people. And if not, oh well, you didn't pay for it, so all good there. Nothing lost, nothing gained except for your time. And maybe some brain cells. All right, cheers, folks.